My dad told everyone at dinner I should pay him back for raising me. So I stood up, handed him these papers, and the room went silent. The low murmur of clinking forks and strained conversation was suddenly sucked from the air, leaving a ringing vacuum in its place. I saw my mother's hand fly to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. My brother's jaw went slack, his perpetual smirk finally wiped from his face. But my focus was on my father, his face a frozen mask of disbelief. In that moment, a single piercing question echoed in my mind. A question for myself and for anyone who has ever felt trapped by family. Would you ever do this to your parents? My name is Sophia Miller. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my adult life, I've felt like I'm running a race I never signed up for. I live in a small apartment on the other side of the city, a place that is mine and mine alone, a sanctuary from the world that demands so much. I work 2 jobs. My days start before the sun is up, stocking shelves at a quiet, sterile grocery store where the hum of the freezers is the only company I have. My evenings are spent behind the counter of a dimly lit diner, wiping down sticky tables and forcing a smile for strangers. The smell of burnt coffee and grease clinging to my clothes long after I've clocked out. Life, for me, has not been a grand adventure. It has been a series of obligations, a quiet ledger of debts that were never mine to begin with, but which I paid all the same. This life of mine, this constant, grinding hustle, it's a secret I've kept. To my family, I am just Sophia, the responsible one, the one who never asks for anything, the one who just manages. They don't see the exhaustion etched under my eyes or the calluses on my hands. They just see the daughter who always says yes. And at the head of that family, the one who set the terms of my existence from the day I was born, is my father, Robert Miller. My father is a man carved from a different era. He believes in hard work, in discipline, and in a rigid, unbending family hierarchy. In his world, parents are the providers, the lawgivers, the creators. And children? Children are an investment. They are vessels into which you pour your time, your money, your resources, and in return, you expect a dividend. You expect loyalty. You expect gratitude. You expect repayment. This was not a philosophy he ever hid. It was the unspoken constitution of our household, the air we breathed. "I put a roof over your head," he would say, not with warmth, but with the finality of a judge's gavel. "I put food on this table. You don't forget that." We never did. Tonight was the annual family dinner. It was my mother's tradition, her one attempt each year to weave the fraying threads of our family back together. For 3 years, I had made excuses. A work conflict, a sudden illness, a car that wouldn't start. The truth was, I couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear to sit at that table and play the part of the dutiful daughter, while the weight of my secret life pressed down on me. But this year, my mother's voice on the phone had a tremor in it I couldn't ignore. "Please, Sophia, it would mean the world to me, just for one night." So I agreed. And now I'm here. I drove my 10-year-old sedan, the one with the rattling engine and the temperamental heater, to the suburbs where I grew up. The house looked the same, a solid 2-story brick home that my father always spoke of with immense pride, as if he had built it with his own 2 hands. It was the symbol of his success, his kingdom. As I pulled into the driveway, I felt that familiar, heavy feeling settle in my stomach, a cold dread that had nothing to do with the winter air. I took a deep breath, clutching the steering wheel, trying to shake off the ghosts of 1,000 childhood lectures. In my purse, nestled in a crisp manila envelope, was a secret of my own. A secret I had been cultivating for 5 long years. It felt like a small, dense star, pulling all the light and energy in the car toward it. My mother, Clara, opened the door before I could even ring the bell, her face breaking into a radiant smile that, for a moment, made me forget why I was so anxious. She wrapped me in a tight hug, and the scent of her rosewater perfume was a comforting wave of nostalgia. "Sophia, you came," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so glad you're here." Her warmth was a stark contrast to the scene in the living room. My father was in his usual armchair, a glass of amber liquid in his hand, the television muted on some political talk show. He didn't stand. He simply looked up, his gaze sweeping over me, assessing. "Sophia, you're late." "Traffic was bad, Dad," I said, my voice betraying none of the tension coiling in my gut. "You should have left earlier," he grunted, turning his attention back to the screen. "A responsible person plans for traffic." And there it was, the first jab. It was never a direct attack, always a criticism disguised as a life lesson. It was his way of reminding me of my place, of the standards I was perpetually failing to meet. My brother, Leo, sauntered in from the kitchen, a smartphone glued to his hand. Leo is the golden child. 2 years younger than me, he has always moved through life with an effortless grace that I could only envy. Where I was cautious, he was bold. Where I saved, he spent. Our parents saw his recklessness as ambition, his charm as a sign of future success. He'd had his college tuition paid in full, a brand new car for his 21st birthday, and a down payment for his condo gifted to him without a second thought. He was the prize stallion. I was the sturdy workhorse. "Sophia, hey," he said, barely looking up from his phone. "Mom's been freaking out all day. Thought you were gonna bail again." "I'm here, Leo," I said, forcing a smile. We gathered around the dining table, the same heavy oak table that had witnessed every major and minor event of our lives. The smell of my mother's roast chicken filled the air, a scent that should have been comforting, but tonight felt suffocating. The conversation was stilted, a dance of avoidance. My mother tried to fill the silence, asking about my job, my first job, the respectable one at the grocery store, not the second one at the diner. I gave her the usual vague answers. "It's fine, Mom, same old, same old." My father listened, his fork and knife moving with a precise, deliberate rhythm. "Still at that grocery store, huh? Good, steady work. But you're not getting any younger, Sophia. A girl your age should be thinking about a career, something with a future, not just a job." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. A career. As if I had the luxury of choice. As if the last 10 years of my life hadn't been dictated by their needs instead of my own. I remember being 22, my college acceptance letter on the fridge, a small scholarship secured. I was going to study nursing. I had a plan. Then my father's business took a hit, and suddenly the mortgage was 3 months behind. My college fund, the money I had saved since I was 16, disappeared overnight to keep the family afloat. It was a loan, he had said, an investment in the family. I never saw a penny of it again. "I'm doing okay, Dad," I murmured, focusing on cutting a piece of chicken. "Okay doesn't pay the bills in the long run," he said, his voice laced with that familiar disappointment. He looked at Leo, his expression softening. "Leo is on the management track at his firm. They're talking about a promotion already. That's a career." Leo beamed, puffing out his chest. "Yeah, it's going great. The boss loves me." I wanted to scream. I wanted to list every bill of theirs I had covered, every late-night call from my mother about a car repair or a leaky roof that they couldn't afford. I wanted to ask Leo how his career was going, when I knew for a fact I had wired him $500 just last month so he could make his rent after a bad week. But I stayed silent. I had been staying silent my whole life. It was the price of peace. But tonight, the price felt too high. The weight in my purse felt heavier. The secret was burning a hole through the leather. I was tired of the peace. I was tired of being the silent, responsible one. In that moment, I had a choice. A choice I think everyone faces at some point. Do you stay silent and keep the peace? Or do you fight back and risk shattering everything? As my mother brought out the dessert, a homemade apple pie, my father cleared his throat, commanding the attention of the table. He raised his glass of wine, a slow, deliberate motion. The warm, dim light caught the deep red of the liquid, and for a second, it looked like blood. "I'd like to make a toast," he announced, his eyes scanning the table before they landed, with unnerving intensity, on me. The air grew thick with tension. My mother smiled nervously, unsure of what was coming. Leo looked bored. My father's lips curled into a semblance of a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were cold, like a banker assessing a loan. "To family," he began, the classic opening, "and to the responsibilities that come with it." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Sophia, you're 32 now. You've had a roof over your head, you've been fed, you've been clothed. We gave you a good start in life. It's about time you started thinking about paying all that back." The room went utterly still. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. My mother's smile faltered, her face paling. Even Leo looked up from his phone, a flicker of shock in his eyes. He wasn't telling me to contribute. He was telling me I owed him for my own childhood. He was handing me an itemized bill for my life, here in front of everyone. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a demand. He raised his glass higher. "So, to Sophia, may she finally start paying her debts." The world seemed to slow down. My father's words echoed in the sudden, deafening silence of the dining room. "Pay it all back." The phrase was a punch to the gut, knocking the air from my lungs. It wasn't just the audacity of it, the sheer breathtaking entitlement. It was the complete and utter erasure of my life, of everything I had already given. He didn't see me. He saw a delinquent account. His words sent me reeling back in time, the warm dining room dissolving into a series of stark, lonely memories. I saw myself at 25, slumped over the sticky counter at the diner late at night, my body aching with a fatigue that felt bone deep. My phone had buzzed then, the screen lighting up with a message from my mother. Her words full of quiet panic were burned into my memory. The dentist had found a problem. A root canal and a crown were needed, and the insurance wouldn't cover the full $1,800. "I don't know what we're going to do," she had written. I remembered the heavy sigh that escaped my lips, the weary resignation as I pulled out my worn checkbook and wrote out the amount, another piece of my own future signed away. My father spoke of debt, but he had no idea what the word truly meant. He didn't know the weight of it, the way it settles into your bones and becomes a part of you. My entire 20s were a testament to their debts, not mine. I wasn't just working 2 jobs, I was living a life in service of their financial instability, a quiet, one-woman bailout plan they never even knew existed. I thought of the property tax bill, the frantic, hushed call from my mother, her plea not to humiliate my father by letting him know she had asked me for help. I remember staring at my own savings account, the money I was slowly, painstakingly building for a down payment on a small condo, a place of my own. I drained it without a second thought, and the dream of my own front door, my own small patch of earth, drifted further away. Then there was Leo. My phone rang one night when I was trying to study for an online certification course, a small attempt to build something for myself. It was him, his voice casual and entitled, an amazing opportunity, a networking trip to Vegas with his work friends. He was just a little short. $800. He'd pay me back, he swore. I closed my eyes, the tuition payment for my course, due the next day for $850, staring at me from my laptop screen. Yeah, Leo, I can help, I'd said, my voice flat. He never paid me back. A week later, his social media was plastered with photos of him laughing, holding a ridiculous novelty drink, the neon lights of the Vegas Strip reflecting in his sunglasses. He was living a life funded by my sacrifice, and he was completely and blissfully unaware. Or maybe he just didn't care. To him, I was the family's built-in safety net, the responsible one. It was just what Sophia did. And I had to wonder, is it truly fair for parents to expect repayment for this simple act of raising their kids? Is it fair to praise one child for his ambition while the other quietly pays for it? My father's attitude wasn't born of malice, not exactly. I tried to understand it. He was from the old school. He grew up with nothing, and he saw his children as extensions of his own legacy. We were his assets. Leo was the high-yield stock, full of promise. I was the reliable, low-interest bond. Not exciting, but always there to be cashed in. Back in the dining room, the present crashed back in on me. A lump formed in my throat, hot and tight. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I fought them down. I would not cry. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. For years, I had swallowed my resentment for the sake of a fragile peace. But what had it gotten me? To be sitting here at 32, being told that my entire life of sacrifice was not only unrecognized, but was considered a down payment on a debt I could never hope to repay? In that moment, something inside me shifted. A quiet, steady click, like a lock tumbling into place. The years of quiet sacrifice, it wasn't a weakness, it was a strength they had taken for granted. And the secret in my purse, it was no longer just a plan. It was a declaration. It had started 5 years ago. Another hushed, frantic call from my mother. My father's business had failed for good, and a bank loan against the house was coming due. They were talking about foreclosure. The thought of them losing the house, his monument to himself, was too much. So I made a decision. I consolidated my savings, took out a personal loan, and quietly began making their mortgage payments. Every month, for 60 straight months. I picked up the second job at the diner specifically for that purpose. Every greasy burger I flipped, every sticky table I wiped, was a brick in the wall of their security. My father was still looking at me, his glass held high, an expectant, smug look on his face. He expected the same old, compliant Sophia, but she wasn't here anymore. I slowly brought my gaze up, meeting his eyes across the table. The hurt was still a dull ache in my chest, but it was now overlaid with a cold, hard clarity. A small, sad smile touched my lips. "You know what, Dad?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Maybe you're right." Everyone stared at me, stunned. My mother looked relieved, my father looked triumphant. I continued, my voice low but carrying. "Maybe I do owe you something." The world went black for a second, and the only sound was the frantic, desperate drumming of my own heart in my ears. The air in the room crackled with a strange mixture of my father's relief and my mother's confusion. He lowered his glass, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. He had won. He had asserted his authority, and I, the ever-dutiful daughter, had folded. My mother let out a breath she seemed to have been holding, her shoulders slumping slightly. Leo had already lost interest, his thumbs once again flying across his phone screen. They thought it was over. They had no idea it was just beginning. I took a slow, deliberate sip of water. I placed the glass back on the table with a soft click that seemed to echo in the quiet room. Then I pushed my chair back slightly. "Actually," I said, my voice calm and clear, "before we continue with dessert, I'd like to say a few words, if that's okay." Everyone snapped in my direction. I never asked to speak. I was the audience in our family drama. My mother's brow furrowed with concern. My father's smirk vanished, replaced with a look of mild irritation. "What is it, Sophia? If you have something to say, say it." "Thank you," I said, my gaze sweeping over each of them before settling back on my father. The envelope in my purse was a solid, reassuring weight. This was it. There was no turning back. "I want to start by saying thank you," I began, and the words were genuine. "You're right, Dad. You did give me a roof over my head. Mom, you did cook thousands of meals for me. You gave me a place to grow up. You gave me life, and for that, I am truly and deeply grateful. Nothing I say or do can ever change that." My mother's eyes softened. My father nodded curtly, accepting his rightful tribute. "Gratitude is important," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "But so are boundaries. So is respect. For years, I've felt like I was living my life according to an unwritten contract, one where my role was to be the silent supporter, the emergency fund, the one who cleans up the messes without ever being acknowledged. I've done it because I love this family, but loving you does not mean I have to erase myself." The mood shifted. The air grew tense. Leo finally put his phone down, sensing a storm. "Sophia, what is the meaning of this?" My father's voice was low, a warning growl. "This is not the time or the place for dramatics." "With all due respect, Dad, you're the one who chose the time and the place when you handed me a bill for my own upbringing." I shot back, my voice level but with a new edge of steel. "You want to talk about debts? Let's talk about debts. Let's make it all transparent, right here and now." I didn't raise my voice. I spoke with the chilling calm of someone with nothing left to lose. I started to list them, not as accusations, but as facts on a balance sheet. "Mom, do you remember your emergency dental surgery 3 years ago? The one that cost nearly $2,000? I looked at my mother, whose eyes widened in dawning horror. "That was me. I paid for that." I turned to my father. "Dad, do you remember that winter the furnace broke down? The $5,000 for a new one that just appeared in your bank account, which you thought was a clerical error?" His face began to harden. "That wasn't a bank error. That was my savings." My gaze found Leo. "Leo, the $800 for your Vegas trip? The $500 last month for your rent? The countless other times you've called me, short on cash? That was me. Every single time." The room was utterly silent, a frozen tableau of shock. Each statement was a stone dropping into a still pond, shattering the placid surface of their assumptions. The property tax scares, the car repairs, the credit card bill you couldn't cover after Christmas 2 years ago, Dad. I paid it. All of it. For 10 years, a significant portion of my income from jobs you look down on has gone directly into this household. I never said a word. I never asked for a thank you, but I will not sit here and be told that I am the one in debt. "That's enough," my father roared, slamming his hand on the table. The plates jumped. "How dare you? How dare you sit there and throw charity in our faces? This is the height of disrespect." "It's not charity when it's expected. It's not a gift when it's treated like an obligation. You don't get to take and then accuse me of being disrespectful for finally showing you the bill." My mother put a trembling hand on my father's arm. "Robert, please, let her finish. I didn't know." Her quiet defense of me was a betrayal my father could not stomach. He shook her hand off, his face flushing a deep, angry red. I reached into my purse, my fingers closing around the thick, crisp envelope. I pulled it out slowly, deliberately. The plain manila paper seemed to glow under the dining room lights. I slid it across the polished wood until it stopped right in front of his plate. It lay there between us, a silent challenge. I had to wonder, if you were in my shoes, would you go through with it? Would you expose everything right there, in that moment? "You said I should pay you back, Dad. You want repayment for raising me? You want the debt settled?" I leaned forward slightly, my eyes locking with his. "Well, open this."
My father stared at the envelope as if it were a venomous snake. His pride and fury were at war with his curiosity. He had to know. With a short, sharp motion, he snatched it from the table. His fingers fumbled with the flap, tearing it open crudely. He expected a check, I think, a pathetic offering he could scoff at. He pulled the papers out. I watched his face. I saw the initial confusion as he took in the dense, legalistic text. It wasn't a check. It wasn't cash. His eyes darted across the page, and then they stopped. They stopped on a single bolded line at the top. Deed of reconveyance and full payment certification. He read it again, and again. The color drained from his face, leaving a sickly gray pallor. His blustering anger evaporated, replaced by a profound, earth-shattering shock. His gaze lifted from the paper and met mine. In his eyes, I saw not just confusion, but the terrifying dawn of comprehension. He frantically flipped through the pages. The official letter from the bank stating the mortgage on this property, his house, his kingdom, was paid in full. The certificate from the county. The final page was a payment history summary. 60 consecutive payments spanning 5 years, all from a third-party account. My account. His mind was surely reeling, just as mine was, remembering the sacrifices. I saw it all again in a flash. Me sitting in a stark bank office, signing loan documents with a grim but resolute expression. A split screen in my memory, my family watching TV, oblivious, while I was at the diner, sweating under the kitchen lights, frantically plating orders. Me alone in my small apartment at 2 a.m., eating instant ramen, clicking the button to schedule another mortgage payment, a single tear of grim satisfaction tracing a path down my cheek. The seasons changed, but the ritual remained the same. Work, eat, sleep, pay. Back in the dining room, the silence was absolute, heavy and fragile. My mother was the first to break it. "Robert, what is it? What does it say?" she asked, her voice trembling. He didn't answer her. He couldn't. He just stared at the papers, his hands shaking so violently that the documents rattled. He looked at me again, his mouth opening and closing silently. The man who always had an answer was speechless. He had built his identity on being the provider, the one who held the keys to the kingdom, and I had just shown him that I had secretly bought the entire castle out from under him. He finally found his voice, a choked, strangled whisper. "She paid off the house." The words dropped into the silence, and the shockwave finally hit. My mother gasped, her hands flying to her chest. Her eyes wide with disbelief darted from the papers to my face. She was doing the math. The years, the cost, the sacrifice. She was seeing my 2 jobs, my old car, my tiny apartment, not as signs of my failure, but as evidence of a secret, profound act of love. Her face crumpled, and she broke into quiet, racking sobs. It wasn't the sound of joy. It was the sound of a heart breaking with the realization of what her daughter had given up. Leo's reaction was the polar opposite. His face twisted into a mask of pure, ugly jealousy. "Paid it off? With what money?" He looked at me, his eyes narrowed. "Is that where it all went? You've been hoarding money, lying to us all this time, just to pull off this stunt?" The idea that I had money he hadn't been able to ask me for was to him the ultimate betrayal. But it was my father's reaction that I had been waiting for. His shock was now curdling into something dark and venomous. His ego, the central pillar of his being, had been shattered. He could not accept this as a gift. He saw it as the ultimate humiliation. His face, which had been pale, now flushed a deep volcanic red. He looked less like a grateful father and more like a dethroned king about to order an execution. He raised himself up from his chair, his body trembling with fury. He slammed the paid-off mortgage papers down on the dining table, the sound like a gunshot. "How dare you?" he roared, his voice shaking the very foundations of the house I had just saved. A single tear escaped my eye, a tear of defiance, not sorrow, as I held his furious gaze without flinching.
The dam broke. My father's roar shattered the last remnants of civility, and decades of unspoken resentments erupted. Embarrass you? I finally shouted back, my voice raw with a pain so deep it felt bottomless. I stood up, my own chair scraping harshly against the floor. I just saved your home. The home you were about to lose 5 years ago. The home you lecture me about respecting while you were months away from a foreclosure notice? This isn't about embarrassment, Dad. It's about your pride. You can't stand the fact that I, your irresponsible daughter, was the one who kept this family from falling apart? You did this to shame me, he bellowed, jabbing a finger at the papers. You kept this secret for years, planning this, waiting for the right moment to throw it in my face and make me look small. This isn't a gift, it's a weapon. It's a receipt, I screamed, the tears flowing freely now. It's the receipt for every time you called me a disappointment. It's the receipt for every sacrifice you never saw, for every night I worked until my feet bled so that you could sleep soundly in a house you couldn't afford. You wanted me to pay you back? Fine, the debt is paid. Consider this my final payment. Leo, seeing our father's rage as his cue, jumped in. She's right, Dad, it is a weapon. She's been playing the martyr all these years while she secretly controlled everything. How much more do you have stashed away, Sophia? You think this makes you a saint? It makes you a liar. I lied to protect you. I spun on him, my anger white hot. All of you. I lied to protect Mom from the stress, and I lied to protect Dad from his own pride. And I lied to you, Leo, because you would have bled me dry without a second thought. Don't you dare stand there and call me a liar when you've been living off my lies for years. My mother, who had been sobbing, finally found her voice. She rose, her small frame trembling, and stepped between my father and me. Stop it, both of you! Just stop! She turned to my father, her eyes pleading. Robert, can't you see what she's done? She gave up her life for us, for this house, for you. This isn't an insult, it's a miracle. Then she turned to me, her hands reaching for mine. And you, my sweet girl, I am so sorry. I never knew. I should have protected you. Her apology was the validation I had craved my entire life. But my father was beyond reason. Seeing his wife side with me was the final betrayal. So that's it. You're on her side now. The two of you against me. Leo, seeing the tide turn, made his choice. This is insane, he spat, grabbing his jacket. You've ruined everything, Sophia. I hope you're happy. He stormed out and the front door slammed shut, a sound of finality that shook the house. The three of us were left in the wreckage. My father stared at the empty space where Leo had been, then back at me. The rage had subsided, leaving behind something far more devastating. The cold, hard reality of his loss. He looked smaller, older. The proud patriarch was gone, replaced by a brittle, broken old man. I took a deep breath, wiping the tears from my face. My voice, when I spoke again, was quiet, devoid of anger, filled only with a profound and weary sadness. I'm done, I said softly. I'm done being the backup plan. I'm done being the family ATM. I'm done setting myself on fire to keep you all warm. I looked at my mother and gave her hand a final squeeze. I love you, Mom. Then I looked at my father. I'm going to go live my own life now, the one I put on hold for you. His magnificent pride, the fortress he had built around himself, finally crumbled. His face collapsed. His shoulders sagged. His eyes, for the first time I could ever remember, filled with tears. I turned to leave. As I reached the doorway, his voice, a choked, trembling whisper, reached across the space between us. It was a question that lingered, a question for anyone who has been pushed to the breaking point. After all this, would you ever forgive him, or is it simply too late? Sophia, he pleaded, his voice cracking with a desperation I had never heard before. Don't leave. I stood there in the doorway, my back to him, the echo of his plea hanging in the ruined atmosphere. Don't leave. The two words he had never said, The two words I had yearned to hear my entire life. Not out of love, perhaps, but out of a sudden, terrifying understanding of what he was about to lose. It wasn't enough, but it was something. I didn't turn around. If I looked at his broken face, I was afraid the old, familiar sense of duty would pull me back in, and I had fought too hard to be ensnared again. Slowly, I took my hand off the door frame and stepped into the hallway. As I walked towards the front door, the silence was broken by another sound, so quiet I almost missed it. "Thank you." It was a broken whisper, a shard of a word forced from his throat, stripped of all pride. It wasn't a solution. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was an acknowledgement. After a lifetime of being invisible, I had finally been seen. I paused at the front door, taking one last look at the house. It wasn't his kingdom anymore. It was just a house, a collection of bricks and mortar that I had paid for with my youth. I felt a strange sense of detachment, a calm, quiet release. The house no longer had any power over me. My mother appeared at my side, her face blotchy and tear-stained, but her eyes were clear. She wrapped her arms around me in a fierce, tight hug. It was a hug of gratitude, of apology, of profound love. "Go live your life, my Sophia," she whispered, her voice full of a strength I hadn't heard in years. "You've earned it." I nodded, gave her a watery smile, and opened the front door. The cool night air was a shock to my skin, crisp and clean. It felt like the first breath of a new life. I walked down the stone path, not looking back. I got into my old, rattling car, the engine turning over on the second try, as if it too was eager to leave. As I pulled away from the curb, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. The weight I had been carrying for so long was finally gone. I had not just paid off a mortgage, I had purchased my own freedom. The road ahead is uncertain. I don't know if our family will ever truly heal, or what my relationship with my father will look like. But for the first time, those questions don't scare me. Because whatever happens next, it will be on my terms. My life is finally my own. What would you do if someone demanded you repay your childhood? Comment below. Your story might help someone else find their own freedom.